Well, let me give you some history first about growing food indoors. Okay, so back in the 1930s, some agronomists in the United States and in Europe also, sensing a need for an alternate way of growing food, learned that plants will actually grow without soil if you supply the right nutrition in a water environment. So the term hydroponics came into vogue then. During the Second World War, hydroponics played a big role in the South Pacific. The Japanese were busy torpedoing our supply ships from California, laden with food, and all of a sudden they said, well, look, we're going to have to grow food here. What's the best way to do it? And believe it or not, we raised 8,000 tons of food hydroponically during the Second World War to feed our troops. The moment the war ended, we said, okay, back to business as usual. Let's just go back and plant and harvest and live a good life. And the post-war era of the United States is history. The industrial complex took over. The Eisenhower era came in. Everybody looked like they were living in the land of milk and honey. We had huge immigrations to this country. All the people that lived in the Midwest that migrated to the West Coast during the 30s because of the crop failures in the Midwest, and this big dust bowl abandoned all of that for California. So you've read Grapes of Wrath. I'm sure everybody else has too, right? At least seen the movie. By the way, I show the movie to my students, and no one recognizes any of the actors. And I said, that's Bridget Fonda's father you're looking at. And they can't believe that. They know who Bridget Fonda is. So. Okay, so they don't even know who Peter Fonda is. I have to show them Easy Rider to get them on track again. But, okay, so the idea is that we spoiled the Midwest by over-farming in a place that farming shouldn't have occurred. We then moved west, and now we're over-farming in a place where farming shouldn't occur either, and that is the Imperial Valley. Without irrigation and fertilizers and pesticides, farming is impossible in that area. But because of the Second Green Revolution, we did it. And now that's about to fail. If you look at the Food and Agriculture Organization's predictions over the next 10 years with regards to world crop production, the yield, the annual yield, will drop by 20%. That's a worldwide prediction based on rapid climate change, which is, of course, the other part of the equation that we're all worried about but don't know what to do anything about, right? So, try teaching this to college students, and they'll start throwing rotten tomatoes at you at the end because they don't want to hear any more bad news. They've gotten so much bad news that they're thinking about getting a job, and what the hell's the use in working when the whole world's going to collapse around you, right? So I have to give them something positive to cling to. So this is how vertical farming, the concept of urban farming, actually arose, and it arose in my class about 10 years ago. I asked the class, okay, enough gloom and doom. Let's think about something positive. What would you like to work on for the next half of the semester? As a group, without my interference, you pick a project, I'll support it, I'll tell you where to go for the references if you need my advice, but mostly you're on your own, and I would like you to write it up at the end. And so they came back to me the next class and they said, we think rooftop gardening would be a good idea. Here's something local we can do that has global implications. And people are doing it now also. Let's see how many people we could feed if we just took Manhattan and said, how many people do you think we can feed raising food on the rooftops of Manhattan? And not the commercial buildings, just the apartment complexes. Okay, so they had to go to the map room at 42nd Street. And this is before we had Google Earth. This is the hard copy Google Earth version of Manhattan. So you go to this map room, and there's these huge leather-bound books. I mean, it takes 2 people to turn a page. But the architectural footprint of the building is right there, and it's all to scale. And so you can compute how many acres of rooftop garden you have. And that took them 3 weeks. And they determined that there are 13 acres of rooftop. That was in around the year 2000. Okay, I said, you've got 13 acres of farmland. Now what are you going to grow? And, back to the drawing board, right? So they had to look up the most energetically yielding crop, and that turned out to be rice. Wasn't a surprise because half of the world eats rice as their main staple. Growing rice on the rooftops of New York, Manhattan, would feed 2% of the population of Manhattan. Again, they got out their rotten tomatoes and almost, they really wanted to crucify me at this point. Because, I put them through all these hoops. I made them jump through every hoop possible to behave as a group, to come up with an answer to any question. It didn't matter what the question was. It mattered how you got the answer. all right? It mattered how you got it, not what the answer was. So at the end, I tried to mollify them by saying, look, okay, so you can't grow a lot of food on the rooftops. But what about all those apartment buildings that are abandoned? What about all those empty lots? What about Floyd Bennett Air Force Base? What about the fact that we might be getting Governor's Island back? That's all within the city limits of New York City. I said, imagine how much food we could grow if we just stuck it inside buildings. Class dismissed. And I'm not joking. That's exactly how it happened. And I got a little hysterical thinking about it. I said, this is crazy, But I'm married to a woman who grew up in the Bronx. So as I'm driving her to work every day at St. Vincent's Midtown Hospital, where she used to work, by the way, that's no longer a hospital, she started to ask me, well, what do you mean by indoor farming? I mean, what are the possibilities here? And, as I talked to her, and of course I go to the internet and download some stuff on hydroponics.